Good day. Welcome to a recording of an integration, the pre-built integration done between Windmill and Descartes for the EasyClearance and ITMR4 products. My name is Joseph Haroon. I'm the Vice President of Professional Services here at Windmill. I'm being joined today by Glenn Palanaki, Vice President of Industry Strategy for Forwarding and Brokerage at the Descartes side. We're here to talk to you about the integration between these two products. So we've built the tool in a pre-built settings where we can automatically use EasyClearance for Descartes. EasyClearance is a custom brokerage tool that will automate the processing of paper commercial invoices and extracting the header and line item details. In our particular scenario, we're going to show you one that allows central control of sending documents from ITMR4 or DM in Descartes to our EasyClearance product. We're going to talk to you a little bit about how we flag vendor importer tables to see if documents do qualify to OCR. This is a very important point because we want to empower users to choose documents that are going to have the largest value in our pre-built integration. By having users control what document flows to automation, flows to the OCR tool or not, by having the users control some administration, by having the vendor and import table flags that say, hey, this vendor and import table is a good fit for OCR. There's a lot of lines. My lines have parts database that match to the codes. The quality is high. With these three things, it makes it a good fit. And so we're not sending transactions that may not deliver as much automation as required. We're really sending those focused transactions, those transactions that you're in the middle of the day would take you an hour to process. Once that document's been classified, it does send with some header information back and forth. So the transaction's always being tracked in ITMR form. Let's go through a bit of that flow. So the process still starts where it does today, in Descartes. Where the users are first verifying, do we have all the documents related to this shipment is available. Then there's this trigger flag, is this particular transaction OCR ready? And that's for the same three reasons that was pre-configured. And usually the vendor import table allows that to be able to say this is a good one for OCR. Then what the Descartes system is doing is sending an XML to the Windmill tool. This is cloud to cloud. With some header information like the transaction ID so we can keep track on the transaction, which we're going to show you a little later. We're then going to OCR that commercial invoice. We're then going to queue it to a user who's going to correct any OCR errors or train it, because there's machine learning in this tool where users are actually training the document and then it will know it for next time. We're going to demonstrate that as well. Once this is done, transactionally, that XML is going to be sent back to the Descartes tool for the entry to be validated, completed, all the business rules to get triggered, checked against parts database, and then the normal audit and billing process for that process to complete. From here, I'm going to pass it on to Glenn, who's going to share his screen, share the Descartes platform, and start his side of the demo. And we're going to pass it a little back and forth to show how all these integrations that are pre-built and ready for any ITMR4 client to be using.
Thanks, Joseph. Appreciate the overview. And let's dive in here now onto the ITMR4 specific section. We're going to start off with the document management portion first, knowing that both the web document management front end and the ITMR4 back end are both going to essentially trigger off the same process. So here, as we've jumped in to document management, it's similar layout that you've seen with the cues on the left-hand side, thumbnails on the right. So if we go ahead and just hit attach, you'll see the side-by-side view, PDF on the right, data entry on the left. And here, you're familiar with the data entry. We'll start with the card control number, And this is a natural place to start because as you enter in this information, it does a bunch of queries in the background. So if the card control number already exists with the transaction, and it will just attach documents that are already existing to a transaction, it does all of that. But there at the top, you see it's a new transaction. Document type here is defaulted, in this case, to the client doc, and it is always attached. So right there, that OCR flag that you see on the screen, it's grayed out. I can't override it, and that's because the setup on the back end is so that the application knows this is going to go to OCR. So I'll just go ahead, pick a different client code. We see the notes pop up just to give you an idea of what release notes the customer might have. All the other fields that you know with processing type here, we'll select it's a single window type entry. And there are also team defaults that the DM user can use. So in this case, we will just use our Bella demo account. There's things like ETA and ship date that are there just to help as a transaction is loaded into ITM. In this case, a lot of this information is up to the user in how much they want to put in. So we'll just put that it's a rail type shipment. We'll pick US vendor 1, and really depending on how much the user wants to put in, we know we can just go ahead. And in that case, we have our successful transaction created. So in this case, it went to ITM and automatically created the queue for that previous document to send to EasyClearance in the background. So me as a DM user, I can go, or I can go with the next shipment. In this case, we will go back to the queue real quick, and we'll pick the next document based on modified date or the time that we received it from fax or email. So we'll hit the attach button. And in this case, we'll choose a different document type. And here's where the logic allows the user to say, I'm going to essentially tell the system I want it to go to OCR. In that case, we click the box and we can turn it off and on. And that's the logic, how different document types trigger different logic. In the previous case, you saw that it was OCR and we couldn't enable it. In this case, we can. So we'll also make it web visible. And let's start again back down at the cargo control number. So we can see on the top there, it's a new transaction. We'll also pick a different client, in this case, client 2, no notes popped up. This will be a single window type entry. And here, previous example, we didn't click an ETA, and in this it does. It just gives us a calendar and time that the ETA is. And then we'll also click a ship date and choose a particular date. In this case, we'll also pick another vendor. And here is where we can start pulling some information just to make the data entry more robust. We're looking at a commercial invoice here on the right, so we can just go ahead and choose the commercial invoice. And some documents you can highlight if they are data PDFs. Sometimes they're images, and you can't. So we can just type it in and then put in the commercial invoice date. So you can use a calendar or just type it in. And this is, again, up to the DM user on how much information they want to fill in at the time of creating the entry here, right in document management. So we'll select the right day, and then we hit submit. So there the application created our second transaction, and that will then be sent off both to ITM and then trigger the queue to send to EasyClearance. So here we're going to start an entry from the character user interface. So this is the quick add screen that it's just our simplest data entry. So we go from client to vendor. We'll choose a shipment date here. We pulled up the calendar, and let's just create some fictitious $10,000 entry. Again, commercial invoice or PO number, either one can be used. So we have a sample document, very similar to our previous example. We're just using it for consistency's sake. So we can paste in the commercial invoice number. Again, the commercial invoice date we'll add in based on the documents. So we'll have some silly cargo control number from FedEx, 400- so on. Some gross weight, some net weight as well. And this application is set up to generate the transaction number. So we have the transaction number. We'll just hop all the way down to the ETA just so we can save this header. So credit process has taken its course and it's told us credit approved. So now we'll back out of this. And just to give you an idea, we said, let's complete the shipment. And here there's so many errors. Why? Because we just have really a shipment header and nothing much else. So we'll click and drag the document over. And then we'll go to SSD. So for those that have click and drag enabled, that's a feature that you can use. So here we're just going to set up an SSD. We'll pick a document type. And remember, there's logic behind each of these that says when can you attach, always, never, or based on the client code. So we recognize all of that. So in that case, we said always. So similar to our first case in WebDM, OCR visible was blocked out, and here it's blocked out as well. So it said yes, meaning it is going to send to EasyClearance. There I finished, and in the background, it'll create the queue to send, and there you can see in the event log, OCR is not completed. So it's an open event, and we use this to hinge a lot of business logic on to tell the system, hey, is this done? Is this not done? What are we still waiting for in terms of managing the OCR interactions with EasyClearance? So let's start a second one here. We'll choose client one. Lots of notes come up for this, as we saw in DM as well. We'll pick some vendor that's set up. So US vendor one. Choose a shipment date. Let's throw in some commercial invoice value, $45,000. And we'll check our second document that we have here. So again, a commercial invoice. Thankfully, this is extractable. We can copy and paste. As you all know, many of the PDFs we get are not this kind, but EasyClearance handles all of these different types of documents really well. So we'll pick some silly card control number again. Some gross weight and net weight just to get through all the validations. We have our transaction number created, and let's jump all the way to ETA. Here we finished a shipment, credit was checked again. We left the lines, and now in this case, we'll just say no to running all of the validations. We'll go back to SSD, or we can click and drag. So when we go to SSD, in this case, we'll choose a different document type. And here, the OCR logic will choose one that allows us, or allows me as a user, to tell the system what would I like to do in this case with OCR. So in that case, I said yes. So it's uploading the file based on the click and drag. So the document's been uploaded. Again, in the E-log, we can see that OCR has not been completed. Again, a really important event. So now we're going to jump to another place in the application. So F7 and something called OCR Management. So we'll just filter on everything from today. And here we can see our transactions that we've created here today. And they all show we've sent something to EasyClearance. We want to wait back for the response. So I'll hand it over to you, Joseph.
Thanks, Glenn. And now that those transactions that were processed in ITMR4, we're going to bring it back over to the EasyClearance window. This is going to be a new application where your users log in to actually process those transactions. They're going to train the commercial invoice and get rid of any errors that may have come from OCR mistakes. You can see here we've got a login screen that will be provided to the users. They're going to click login. And the first thing they're going to see is going to see a queue. So this screen we call the work queue, and it shows to the left a variety of shared queues. You know, transactions that need to be followed up. We're allowed to create filters for custom ones. For this case, we just have the EasyClearance validation queue. And what you can see to the right is two actual documents pre-done in ITMR4 sent over to EasyClearance to be validated and completed. We're going to click into, and you can see a few header fields from that pre-training. So that header information that was keyed in advance using either the two screens in ITMR4, where we can see the transaction, we can see that vendor number that was keyed, and we're just going to log right in, click one of the documents. And inside this document, what you see is to the far right, you're going to see, so I'm just going to click no to that so we don't complete it. Now, this is a document that's already been trained. The system has seen this commercial invoice. The user has actually clicked on the fields and said, I'm going to teach you where my part number, where my quantity is. So the second time we receive this document, as you can see, it's a 5-page document, a very painful one to key line by line. And you can see in the middle, we've actually lifted all of these different fields. Users with a double screen monitor, they can actually pop out this image, put it on the monitor to the right so they can see it nicely zoomed in. But for now, we're going to zoom in. At the top of the document, you can see we've got two tabs, our line items and header. In that header tab is information the user really doesn't have to see, but they can reference it back to the transaction that they're working on. On the line items tab, we've got a few header fields, the invoice number, the edit extracted, you can see where we got it from, an invoice date, which we also picked up from that right spot, the currency of the invoice, and then we get really into the meat of the commercial invoices, which is these lines, the repetitive motion. As you can see, we've extracted them, and not only did we extract them, but it actually highlighted to the right each individual row that we pulled off. In this particular case, it was 56 rows that ended up summing to over 92,000. So as you flick through the page, you can see quickly it's showing you where I received that line items in case the system couldn't pick one up. Now, we're going to pretend the system hasn't seen this document before, that it did not train it. It's the first time that this particular vendor is working with you. And we want to show you even that first transaction shows value. So during that first transaction, you can actually just teach it one row by clicking and lassoing it. So I clicked the part number, we clicked the quantity, we clicked the gross weight, unit of measure, clicked the unit price, clicked the line price only of that first row. And then what we're going to do is something called interpolate, where we're going to take that and say, okay, now that I showed you one row, go and loop through all the rest of the pages of this document, including going page 2, 3 to 5, and find that trend, those common fields that exist row by row. And as you can see, just from teaching that one document, just going to hit no to this message so we can zoom back into it, it pulled off all of those different lines right on the fly. Now, it actually did a couple things. We taught it one line so it can receive the rest, but it also learned for the next time I do a commercial invoice, here is what these rows and columns look like. System has automatic rules to double check the amount. So it's got an accounting check. If for some reason I missed one row for $1,000, then the sum of the lines won't equal the grand total. And the system will warn you and say, hey, we're missing a line, and you can use the highlights to be able to find it. Right now, we discussed we're going to mark this for online learning to make sure that the next time it's trained, it's ready to go, and it's even more automated. And just like that, we've completed a 53-line entry. While this transaction is actually being sent back to the line of business system, we're going to see the next document that's in queue. We're opening up that document now. This one's an even larger document. It was 19 pages. As you can see, some variety in how the columns and rows are looking. I'll just click no to that. And just like before, and I like this example because sometimes it used columns, the rows were to the right, but sometimes fields were down below. We're going to extract the invoice number, invoice date, lift those off of the documents, lift up those part numbers, quantities, unit price, total price. Again, this document was pre-trained. Country of origin, as you can see, was actually below, pre-trained and ready to go in this particular scenario. Total amount was picked up, and again, total amount is used for that accounting rule to make sure the sum of those lines do equal a total. Really protects you from any quality issues because you can have variety. Maybe somebody hand wrote an additional line item last minute. Again, we can sit there. This particular transaction was marked for learning. That's why we saw it before. Usually these clients are complete, and we can just say complete the transaction, and it's done. So you saw two examples there. One example where it was pre-trained, but we erased the training, taught it one row, and then looped through. The second example, we actually was already pre-trained, and all the data for that transaction was already pulled out, and we were able to show you to the screen. And now we're in a position where we have no more transactions to work. Those documents are now ready to go back to the line of business system. And what we do is actually we create an XML file. An email is going right to the user. We can open it up, give you an example of it, and really it's got the log of what happened and the actual data to be able to load right into ITMR4. Quickly open up the XML file, and you can see we reference back that transaction. You saw from the previous demo from Descartes that these transactions were placed on hold, waiting for triggers. This file, as it arrives, it'll help complete that transaction and go to the next step. From here, I'll pass it back to Glenn, who's going to show you how we complete the transaction.
Thanks, Joseph. Amazing. All those pages processed that quickly, and now they're sent back to ITM. So a ton of time savings right there, just going through all those lines and getting that sent back. So here we'll go to OCR Management again for a filter for today, and we can see that we still have our 4 transactions that we had set, and this is on purpose. This is really critical because we lock files that have been OCR'd. We wouldn't want a user going in there and trying to type in lines when they see that there aren't any. So a lot of business logic embedded into documents that have been sent to EasyClearance and not received yet back. So in this case, we're going to close the event so we can then go and look at the lines that Joseph just showed us that came over. So here we can see a ton of lines that came back, and you'll see some with and without harmonized codes. And this is the really great part of this integration, is that when we get back those lines from EasyClearance, ITMR4 is going to go and look at the part database and pull in a ton of data and then load the lines. So here we'll close this event as well. For this transaction, go into the lines here, and once again you can see that all of that business logic coming from your part database in coming in and taking things like harmonized code, PGA data, and so on. So if you can imagine all those lines that were on that image that we had just seen Joseph take, there's more information that you need from those lines, as you all know, to go ahead and create that transaction that we need for customs purposes. So things like PGA data and so on. So here we'll filter for that transaction, go through update mode here in our header screen. We'll just save this and get to the line level. We got to put in a sublocation. Just a sec. We'll do in some silly sublocation just to get past it. So credit check got done, and here all of these lines we can see things like harmonized code, things like descriptions, value for duty. All of that information is augmented along with the information that we got back from EasyClearance. And here, if we scroll all the way to the right, things like PGA data, they don't come natively in the documentations from the commercial invoice, but they do exist in your part database. So we can see in this example a ton of lines that pulled in CFIA data on this single window shipment. So we can go into the PGA information and see that it created a CFIA PGA. So if we just go out of this one, we'll show you a different example. Go back to OCR Management, filter for today's date. We'll grab our transaction number. So we'll do a quick filter. You can do this or do F3, a few different ways of getting there. We can see in this case, we still have our OCR event open again as a control to make sure nobody errantly goes and creates lines for the transaction as we're waiting for it to come back. So we've closed that event. We'll go into the invoice header and then lines, and you can see in this example as well, a ton of part information that came from the part database as we matched part code at the time of loading, excuse me. So in this case, this is steel, and as you all know, we would need to have Department of Foreign Affairs on this. So that was in the part database. So as we took that information from EasyClearance, loaded it into the lines, we added DFATD attached to this line because we knew from the part database it would be needed. So here in this case, we have a steel PGA that was entered, and we'll go F4, we'll go back. So as you can see, whatever information that we could add on to what we got from EasyClearance to finish off the entry, that's what we'll do at the time of loading. So all that information augmented together with your part database to help then complete the entry. So that about wraps it up. You saw the integration starting in either web document management or in the character-based ITMR4, that passing then on to EasyClearance with those defaults of letting the user make the decision to OCR or hitting that sweet spot where we know and the system can intuitively already decide when to send EasyClearance. We saw the flags as they come in of OCR and the controls that allows the user to have to make sure that they're managing the OCR flow well. And then as they finish off the shipment, just like you would normally, complete shipment does all the same triggers that you would find today, whether you're sending to a cross or single window, and all then the time savings of not having to key in all those line items, but at the same time having all the benefit of using all the part information that you've loaded for statistical units of measure, for CFIA, for DFADE, or any other PGA. So a lot of great time savings there. So I'll hand it over to you, Joseph, to wrap up.
Thanks so much, Glenn, and we appreciated your participation in this this important integration demonstration for the critical ITMR customer base. The Descartes team and Windmill Services team have really come together to try to offer something, something turnkey to this customer base. So you're not having to execute an entire project. You're not having to set up infrastructure. This thing's cloud to cloud. We want each and every one of the ITMR4 customers to benefit from this automation, just like any of the larger players can and the smaller players can, without having that sort of IT footprint required to set up a big project. I hope everybody found this demonstration to be helpful. If you have any questions, please come visit us at windmill.services. There you'll be able to connect with a consultant who can maybe provide a demonstration of your sample documents or talk to you more about how you can onboard on this solution. Thanks again.